Sterm Worm. Trip of a lifetime. Let's fucking go. Alright, so to whoever drew a penis on my windshield the other day, very mature of you. I hope you got a good laugh out of it. It was with like must. It wasn't with the marker, so it wasn't a big deal or nothing, but that's my work vehicle. I noticed it with passengers in the car. I can't be having penises visible on the windshield. It's not very professional. Speak up on Palestine. Don't be afraid. That's what some fucking loser commented on Rogan posting a podcast on Instagram the other day. First off, Rogan said plenty of times that he doesn't even read his comments. So I don't understand what's the point of even posting something like that. And sometimes people are trolling and sometimes they're for real, but I'm pretty sure that comment is for real. And that's why I'm kind of going to talk about it a little bit. Like, you think Joe Rogan's scared to talk about the Israel-Palestine conflict? Why would he be scared to talk about it? Like, I'll speak for Joe Rogan right now. It's not a topic he's educated about, and he doesn't have a personal opinion on it, except for the fact that he probably just thinks what's happening is terrible and hopes it all ends. But because he's uninformed about the topic, except for any information that he's currently gathering, he doesn't have a strong opinion on it, and it's an issue that doesn't affect him directly, so he doesn't talk about it, as he shouldn't. And it's not about that specific comment. It's just a microcosm of what it represents. It's so ridiculous that there's a popular rhetoric that literally thinks Rogan is speaking with his silence and demands him to talk. And even worse than that is calling him cowardly for not speaking. There's nothing more nauseating than when celebrities, or anybody for that matter, speaks on some shit that they're ignorant as fuck about. So it's backwards to attack Rogan for not saying anything. He should be praised for not saying anything. It should be like, thank you for not speaking on some shit that you got no fucking clue about just because you're a celebrity with the podcast. Like, to me, it's a good thing that Rogan's not speaking up on it, unless he has something to say about it. I demand you to comment on something that you don't even have a perspective on. It makes no fucking sense. Depression is a side effect of something larger at play, and this type of mind frame and people's behavior in comment sections in general is another side effect of it. Another side effect of it is what a lady did to me, like, a week ago at a stop sign. Not even a week ago. It was this week during work. There was 3 of us at the stop sign. I was the last one to pull up. The first car goes, and then me and this lady, she was the next car that was supposed to go, we start to give it gas at the same time. I don't know why I started going. I never do that. Like, I never fuck up stop sign etiquette. Like, I have been zoning out and my mind totally slipped. So we start to go at the same time, and she gives me like a double courtesy honk, nothing aggressive. And I immediately stopped because, like, once I heard her honk the horn, like, I realized what was going on. I was like, oh shit, why the fuck am I going? But, like, I had barely started to go. Like, it's not like I was, like, anywhere near in the middle of the intersection. And simultaneously, as I was going to give, like, a little apology wave, she gives me the finger. I'm telling you, people are absolutely fucking sick. Most people right now are terrible human beings. Their souls aren't bad, but they're under a lot of pressure and they act horribly because of it. And what that lady did to me at a stop sign is just a reflection of it. I was at McDonald's the other day picking up an order for work, and this lady, she wasn't even before me, but like, I'm in the pickup area waiting for mad long, and she walked in after me and stood at the register, so she got greeted first. And looking back on it, when the employee finally came to the register, the lady, she should acknowledge me, like, have you been helped yet? But obviously she wasn't going to do that. And I hate doing pickups for McDonald's because no one's ever at the fucking register at McDonald's. They're all like back there working mad hard, but nobody's standing up front anymore. Nobody gives a fuck about the register. Everybody's focused on the drive-thru. You always got to wait mad long before anybody sees you're there. And I only know from deliveries. It's not like I fucking eat at McDonald's. I haven't eaten fast food in at least 20 years, and people are like, how do you do that? It's not very hard, you know what I mean? Like, if I was forced to eat fast food, like if I was about to die, I could eat fast food, or if I was broke as fuck and that's all I could afford, fast food. But that's not what I would choose to eat. So the employee that like came up and started helping her out, he was like clearly like the manager. So she apparently was also picking up. So she was picking up, but somehow she got to pick up before me, even though she came in after me. So she said her name, and he had been working on her order, so he knew exactly what bag was hers. So he grabs it, and as he's handing it to her, she goes to him, is it too late to switch the sausage for bacon? And I'm thinking, like, what the fuck do you think? He's handing you the bag right now. Like, clearly it's too late. And like I said, he was the manager, so he spoke politely. And this guy was my fucking hero. I will never forget the honor and the courage that this man had. He pulled the breakfast platter out of the bag. He pointed to it and he goes, yeah, it's too late. The sausage is touching the eggs. Like, it's one thing if it was a sandwich and he had to like take the sandwich apart, but it's like a fucking breakfast platter with everything on the side. He could have just grabbed her a side of bacon and just let her have both. And no one like hates a shitty customer more than me. So the fact that I'm the one saying just fucking give it to her highlights the current state of the customer service industry and how the entitled, ungrateful pieces of shit are winning. Like, the food's prepared. You ordered it how you ordered it. Suck it up, and next time you order it with bacon. If you initially ordered sausage, then you clearly like sausage and you were torn between the two. Just eat the sausage this time and be thankful that they're fucking cooking for your fat ass. So she left and she instantly came back with the chip on her shoulder. Like, obviously she was going to be okay with how that went down. So she was like talking to either a guy she was with or someone who was just standing at the register. And when she had originally asked for the bacon, she'd sounded so sweet. She was like, is it too late for me to swap out the side? But now she like had her barber voice on, when she was talking to like the guy who was standing at the register who I was just talking about. It's not the employee. The employee isn't up front right now. He's in the back bagging up my order. So when she was talking to the guy at the register, she's like, I could see he was in a bad mood. I felt like saying, I could see you're in a bad mood because you didn't get the fuck you wanted. And I'm also always in a bad mood when I don't get what I want. But what I want is never for a restaurant to remake food for me because I changed my mind after the food was prepared. So I got handed my bag and I slowly like started to walk out because I wanted to hear this miserable bitch talk to the guy. She was like, let me ask you, these potatoes, are they even cooked? They look wet. She felt like she got disrespected, so she was going to find any reason to let them have it. She's an entitled, ungrateful bitch, and this is who's yelling at children about behaving and showing respect. I bet she's a grandmother guiding future generations, and people wonder why everybody's so fucked up and everyone suffers from mental illnesses. They have ladies like this raising them, and then they're just an extension of that. Whether it's this lady, the girl who gave me the finger, the kid commenting on Rogan's post, or rampant depression, they're all side effects of a sick society. I think society as a whole is literally sick, and these are all side effects of it. There's like a deep-rooted unhappiness wired into a lot of us. And then it only gets worse as life doesn't go according to plan. And next thing you know, you're slamming the horn at someone on the road who literally didn't even do anything wrong. I beat the concept like a dead horse. Our souls feed off of three elements: sex, love, and purpose. And when it's not guiding that, very often it feeds off of being unhappy. If you're unhappy, you could sit around depressed, or you could find something to get mad about. It's somewhere for people to focus their energy, and all these side effects that I mentioned are all different avenues that people take when they walk down the lane of unhappiness. So Rogan just had Trey the Truth on his podcast. I figured he was like extending his arm to like an up-and-coming rapper from Austin or some shit. And I started listening and I realized, oh shit, he's like an old school rapper. He's like a legendary dude. So because like he's like a legend and shit, like I'm not trying to obviously say nothing bad about him, but I'm gonna use this guy's just a couple points I want to make, something I found funny, and then rhetoric that he had that I disagreed with. So what I found funny was like I only listened to the podcast for like 30 minutes, and it's unbelievable how many times he's referenced, yeah, so when I was in New Orleans saving people's lives. Like, he must have said it at least 10 times on the first 30 minutes of the podcast. So I thought that shit was funny. It got to the point where, like, I was, like, waiting for it, like, to come. And then it came. It was, like, I kept getting the reward. I was like, oh, my God, it's crazy. But, like, props to him. You know what I mean? Like, if he was saving lives during Katrina, like, that's amazing that he was down there saving lives. I ain't out here saving nobody. But I just think it's better when you do shit, you don't talk about it. But so his rhetoric that I disagreed with, that I didn't like his perspective on, was substances. He's never smoked or drank, so of course he doesn't get it. And he's like, I choose not to use substances as an escape. Like, I see everything as like an extension. Like, his view on substances is an extension of someone who's like 8 years old. His first perspective on substances was probably like seeing people. He was like, oh shit, I see these people using this shit as an escape. So he was like, I'm not going to do that. So like he went through life like, oh, I'm not going to use substances as an escape. But because of that, I don't think he understands substances. Not everybody uses substances as an escape. A lot of people get high because it feels good to get high, and not because they're necessarily trying to escape anything. Rogan like kind of tried to point it out to him without getting into it. Generally speaking, like maybe alcohol serves as an escape more than weed does, but to assume that everybody uses substances as an escape just sounds like somebody who's never been under the influence of anything. It's an enjoyable part of life, and I barely even get high from weed. Like, I just like the act of smoking. It gives me something to do, and it's not the same if I'm just like smoking tobacco. And I do feel the effects subtly, but I don't get like mad high from weed. Weed is literally like a different drug for me than it is someone who uses it occasionally. Like, they feel the effects of weed to a level that I literally never will again. How I feel from weed kind of resembles the lightheaded feeling you get from smoking a cigarette if you don't normally smoke. I feel the effects more when I smoke a cigarette out of nowhere than if I smoke a bong rip. But the way Rogan talks about weed, like, I don't feel weed like that no more. He talks about weed like he still gets high like I used to get high. Like, I've taken a couple months off during my manic episodes, and then the first time I smoked again, I still didn't get that high. And like, I lean on smoking weed to a shocking level, but I don't use it as an escape. The word I would use is crutch. I undoubtedly use weed as a crutch, but I don't use it as an escape. Right when I started smoking weed on the regular was the first time I kind of had a chance with a couple girls, and I was like excruciatingly nervous, and I definitely used weed as an escape back then, but that was like really the only time I've ever used weed as an escape in life. And back then, I used to get like mad high. Now, if I wanted to turn to weed as an escape, it does even have enough of an effect on me for it to work like that. And the truth of my life is, like, I've always used sports gambling as an escape. Like, I've used it as a reason not to go out. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm good. I'm just going to watch my games. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of like an escape. But there's just something about smoking weed. I like how it always gives me something to do. As long as whatever I'm doing, I could continuously rip the bong, I'm always content and I'm never bored. And I can't go without it. Like, I could, but I hate not having weed. I'm not physically addicted to weed, but I'm definitely mentally addicted to weed. I never don't have weed, other than not smoking weed during my manic episodes in a brief period when I got out of college, because like I was trying to get a job and I thought I might need to pass a drug test. I still haven't gotten that job. Other than that, I don't think I've gone a day without smoking in the past 20 years. Maybe like 5 random days, like here and there, for one reason or another. I just got caught up in some shit and I didn't get a chance to smoke, but I don't even know if that, you know what I mean? Like, I smoke every single day. But what's ironic is, like, when I was drawing up this episode, I was actually dry for literally the first time ever. I thought I might have to go like a month before I could bridge the gap, but like I figured out a situation and I was only dry for like 30 hours, but it was probably like the longest 30 hours of my life. Instinctively, I kept going to grab the bong, and then I realized, like, oh fuck, I don't have any weed. It was the first time I ever like wanted to smoke, but I couldn't smoke because I didn't have weed. And it was like as terrible as I imagined it would be. It was like worse. And that's why I'm the wrong person to be like, get the fuck out of here stereotyping people as using substances as an escape, because I clearly abuse marijuana. But Rogan's the perfect person to prove the point, because his relationship with weed is much healthier than mine. Rogan doesn't use weed as an escape. Imagine seeing Rogan smoking a joint and thinking, damn, it's so sad, look at him over there trying to escape. It just sounds like so stupid when you think of it like that. If anything, for Rogan, weed serves as like a release. And for me, it serves as a crutch. But definitely not an escape for either one of us. And I don't think the majority of weed smokers smoke weed trying to escape. And then like something else from Rogan's podcast, I feel like that's all I really do sometimes, talk about shit that I saw on Rogan's podcast. But I just listen to his podcast and it inspires me, shit that I want to talk about. But I saw a video clip of Rogan. Yeah, so I wasn't even watching his podcast. It was just like a clip I saw on Instagram. I don't even know what podcast episode it was from. I don't know who the girl was. But I saw a video clip of him, and it was a female comic that he had on his podcast. But what she was saying in the clip and how she was saying it just made me roll my eyes. She was mad excited, like, I love watching people bomb. And I was thinking, like, yeah, tell me about it, because I think it's funnier to watch someone bomb than to watch them kill, you know what I mean? So at first when she was like, oh yeah, I love watching people bomb, I was agreeing with her. And then she was like, what I really love is watching someone kill and then the next night watch that same person bomb. It's just so funny, and it's so embarrassing for them to just stand up there with nobody laughing. And I find that comment to be such a fucking joke. And I know Rogan agrees with that gay ass shit. And I know all comics agree with it too. But like, I'll just take the most ridiculous example ever, Dave Chappelle. And it doesn't really work with Chappelle because everybody knows him and he's like a comedy god. And everybody's like laughing before he even speaks. But take like an unknown Dave Chappelle. Let's say he has a fully hammered out, flawless set and it's killer material, vintage Chappelle. And you're on the road together. You watch him crush one night. The place is crying, laughing. And then the next night you watch him identical set with the same exact delivery, but this time it gets no laughs. Are you embarrassed for Dave Chappelle? When he gets off the stage, are you cringing like that was hard to watch? Because I'm not. I don't see things like that. If I think that you have a killer set, then I think you're killing every time you're up there. If I watch an audience not laugh at it, I don't see it as bombing. I see it as an indictment against the audience and not against Dave Chappelle. And just because an audience isn't laughing for whatever reason doesn't necessarily mean that they don't like the set. I'm not a vocal laugher. Very often I'll think something's funny without having an instinctive laugh. It's possible for me to watch a comedian enjoy the show and in my head be thinking that shit's fucking hilarious, but on the surface I'm just smiling and not audibly laughing. I can't force out the laughter. But I'm not embarrassed for a comedian just because people didn't laugh at their set when they're on stage. And if the delivery and the material's good, then it doesn't matter what the crowd reaction was. I don't consider it bombing. I just conceptually see bombing differently than comedians do. To me, for any performer, the ultimate bomb is blanking out and not recovering. I think that's tough to watch, cringeworthy, and embarrassing for a comedian. But I could sit there watching people blank out on their sets all day. It's like a train wreck you can't look away from. Like, you feel bad about it if it's a musician, but it's different with the comedian because they're up there under the pretense that they're supposed to be funny. So it's like you're giving me the exact opposite of funny. Once you blank out on the set, like, the prepared comedy, it's done. You know what I mean? Like, it's so tired at that point. Like, it's see-through at that point, I feel like. But another type of bomb is if you do crowd work or you try to or have to improvise and it doesn't go well. Like, that's bombing. You know what I mean? Like, anybody could bomb like that. And like, I talk about it on another episode, so I don't want to go hard into the different types of bombs and shit. But what I see in comedy as the vintage comedy bomb, and this is like what I think about when I think about people bombing, and this is the bomb that I think is absolutely fucking hilarious, and that is my favorite source of humor in stand-up comedy, and it's when someone's up there with bombing material. Laughing at a corny person's corny-ass jokes is one of my favorite sources of humor. I think it's funny that they think that shit's funny. If you're a comic, you don't gotta be hilarious, but you gotta narrate it a certain way. And I think if your shit's corny, then I think you're bombing every time you're up there, no matter how the crowd's reacting to it. And if someone has an art form, my opinion about them overall as a person shapes around that. It's an easy way for me to find out whether someone's my type of person or if I think they're corny as fuck. And if your shit's corny, then I just think you're corny in general, and I don't care how much you turn up at the club, how many shots you throw down at the bar, or how much the audience is laughing at your set. Your craft is the best representation of who you are, and if I think your shit's corny, then I just think you're fucking corny. And in my opinion, there's nothing more cringeworthy than a corny comedy set, unless it's improv, because that gets a pass. And you could check my raps, you could criticize it however you choose, but you can't say it's corny. Some anonymous people online think the Cannabis Commandments music videos corny apparently, but that's just because they're corny, and they can't recognize some real ass shit when it's right in front of them. If DJ Premier, the producer of that beat, ever comes across that video, I bet you he doesn't think it's corny or quote-unquote hard to watch like at VIBMX on YouTube thinks. But if you create art, specifically rap or comedy, you gave me, or anybody for that matter, an easy way to form an opinion about you. It's a fair way to evaluate somebody. It's what they choose to put out there as a representation of themselves. And it translates. If your art's corny, I'd find you corny even if I met you without seeing your craft. It just speeds up the process of figuring it out. If I think somebody's corny, it gets like highlighted in their set when I watch them do stand-up. Their comedy like makes me mad. I never think someone's corny, and then I hear their set and I think, oh, who would have known they're actually funny this whole time? It's always the opposite. Like, if I think somebody's corny and then I hear their set, like if they do comedy, if I think somebody's corny, they do comedy, and I hear their set, after I hear it, I'm usually rolling my eyes like, oh my God, they're fucking worse than I thought they were. The art just highlights who you are. just like what you choose to put out there on social media does also. It's all the same reflection when you're choosing to put it out there. Sometimes you can't change how you react in the spur of the moment, but when we're talking about something that you're choosing to put out there, it says a lot about you. And if your gender is questionable and you put it in your IG profile, then I have absolutely no problem with that. But if you clearly look male or female and the gender you look is the gender that you actually identify as, then if you put your gender pronouns in your social media profile, I just think you're corny as fuck, and I know I'll find all your comedy corny. And I could come to that conclusion separate from knowing that your gender pronouns are in your profile. If that's who you are, then we just won't have the same sense of humor, and no joke that you write is ever going to hit with me. Like, I'm telling you, if I watched 100 comics and I was told 20 of them had their gender pronouns in their profile, and I had to watch all 100 of the sets and try to pick out which ones had the gender pronouns in their profile, I bet you I'd nail at least 15 of the 20, but probably more like 18 of it. I just know the type, yo. I could spot it from a mile away. And the opposite of this is true for somebody like Jim Gaffigan. I think Jim Gaffigan's fucking hilarious. You see him and he looks like a cheesy old man, and then he does his set and you find out that he's cool as fuck. Show me a Jim Gaffigan set where he bombs, and I bet you I find it funny, because when I think somebody's funny, I don't ever think they bomb. Whereas if I think somebody's corny, I always think they're bombing, no matter how much the crowd is or isn't laughing. Perfect example of this. I watched a girl kill Tony the other day, absolutely fucking murder, and I thought she bombed. Tony was blown away by her. She was an insider, which means she's like inside the room, like she's not with the comedians, which means she's probably not a comedian, and it was actually her first time doing it. And it was so fucking cringeworthy. It was so fucking bad. The first joke was something about an Asian person and the time, and the punchline was something like, so I asked her how much longer. The room went into a fucking frenzy, and the rest of her set was corny ass shock value racist humor just like that, and she murdered. And of course she did. Half the Kill Tony audience is basic ass white chicks getting drunk. If you give an easy to get joke with shock value or like a sexual reference on Kill Tony in synchrony right after the joke is delivered, you could hear a basic ass white chick belting out a laugh harder than I've ever laughed in my life. It virtually happens throughout a few sets every single episode. Like during one joke, like right before you get the bulk of the laughter, one laugh, it will be a laugh like you've never heard a laugh in your life, yo. Every episode you could hear a girl laughing that loud, and the joke is always like a shitty ass joke. It's one of the reasons I couldn't be married. If I was married to a girl who cried laughing at stand-up that I thought was corny as fuck, I'd lose respect for her dead ass. If I went to Kill Tony with the girl and she was crying laughing when the joke was how much longer, how could I ever look at her the same? So my question is, if someone like Dave Chappelle delivers a killer set and gets no laughs, and some other comic crushes with jokes like how much longer, which one is bombing? And when it's phrased like that, I think it just puts it all into perspective. Some audience not laughing at my shit would not make me scrap the game plan and start tailoring to what I see working on Kill Tony. The audience is stepping into your realm when you're on stage. If you're funny, you stand on stage to tell the audience what's funny. They're not dictating to you what's funny in your universe. There's a popular saying, everybody's heard it: if you try to satisfy everybody, then you'll please nobody. And that saying, in my opinion, doesn't hold true for anything more than it does for a comic shaping their set around what the audience is laughing at. I've said there's more bad stand-up in comedy right now than at any point throughout human history, and I truly believe that, and Kill Tony's documented evidence of it. Kill Tony's in a good place right now, but if you're just assessing the minutes on face value, the stand-up is as bad as it's ever been on that show, in my opinion. But what's ironic is it's especially true with girls, and I say it's ironic because Tony Hinchcliffe notoriously doesn't really think girls are funny. I think certain girls are mad funny, but they're not the type of girl who tries to tell jokes or love stand-up comedy. I've been around girls who make me laugh way more than guys do, but their humor is usually situational and plays off of the dynamics of interaction. Girls that I think are funny, it's more about their energy. Their humor isn't really conducive to stand-up comedy. And the type of girl who I think is funny doesn't tend to do stand-up in the first place. A girl who starts doing stand-up comedy is usually a girl who grew up loving it and always wanted to try it. And they usually, for the most part, get up there and try to tell jokes. And what's crazy about how bad the female comics right now are on Kill Tony is they're all up there fucking murdering. And this is where Tony makes me mad, because if the crowd laughs, then he gives them praise, even if the set's cringeworthy. If he doesn't think girls are funny, relatively speaking, then how could he possibly think a lot of what these girls are going up there with is funny? If he was in my shoes, he couldn't possibly think it's funny. It's different as the host of the show, I feel like. And I have a similar artistic philosophy to Tony Hinchcliffe also, but we don't really see eye to eye on jokes. I don't think jokes are funny, and when someone stands up there rattling off jokes, it just sounds like extra cheesy to me. Never in my life has anyone said to me, "Can I tell you a joke?" and it resulted in me laughing. So why would I find it funny when someone stands on stage with a microphone doing it? It just takes a corny joke and makes it feel even more contrived. And in real life, when people do that shit to me, I always, from there on, like, anyone that starts telling me a joke, I just look at them as cheesy from that point going forward. And I saw Tony Hinchcliffe's set once. Not one joke. Rogan too. I've seen a bunch of his sets and I've never heard him tell a joke. Rogan probably tells jokes his 8-year-old daughter, but not on stage. And William Montgomery is the rare exception that's actually relatively funny when he's telling jokes. So I don't want to seem like I'm criticizing him when I rail against people for telling jokes, because I do it on unreleased episodes also. And even William Montgomery, even though I think he's like a hilarious person, generally speaking, it's not my brand of humor. Like, if I'm going to say, like, who I want to see do comedy, you know what I mean? Like, I'm more into someone like Bill Burr or someone like Tim Dillon, someone who just rails against, like, how ridiculous this world is, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like it's someone, like, I have the same perspective on. That's someone who I want to see do stand-up comedy. And it's funny because that goes right to what I have written here that I was about to say. Hans Kim and Cam Patterson do comedy the way I like it to be done, in terms of how they deliver their perspective on things and what they think is funny. Like, the universe threw me a softball with Cam Patterson to highlight my comedy perspective, that some people are just funny in life. Cam's just a hilarious person, and he bottles it up through his stand-up. Someone's funny because they have a funny nature, not necessarily because they hit up 20 mics a week. And doing open mics makes you better at doing stand-up comedy, but it's not necessarily going to make you funny. And someone who thinks doing open mics is how you become funny is never going to be funny, in my opinion. And Cam is a perfect example of what I'm talking about in unreleased episodes when I say it's all about having comedy energy. Certain people just have a funny presence about them where everything they say is funny. They play into it, but they're not necessarily trying to be funny. And Tony highlighted this exactly on a recent Kill Tony episode. He was talking about how the server in a fine dining restaurant that they were at on tour was cleaning up the table with one of those like crumb picker uppers. And when he did it, he did in like one clean swipe. And Cam was like, "What do you have, like a teleportation device or something?" And Tony said the way he said teleportation device was just hilarious, and that's a microcosm of everything I say. He wasn't telling a joke, and it doesn't necessarily translate as being funny when you hear it as a story, but in the moment when you're there, it's laugh out loud funny, and it's the essence of what humor is to me, not stand-up comedy. Cam's stand-up is done really well, and it's very funny, but I bet he's funnier in just the rhythm of life. Another person who epitomizes comedy energy is the new golden ticket winner, Rick Diaz. His presence is just funny, but here's the thing about him. I don't think his stand-up's funny, and I roll my eyes when people crack up to it. It's always some tired ass shit about how he looks like a serial killer, blah, blah, blah. And Tony always gives him a pat on the back for self-deprecation, even though making fun of how you look is the lowest hanging fruit to grab in stand-up comedy. It's the easiest way to create jokes that work and get crowd laughter. And most of his jokes are far-fetched and made up, and I hate that shit. A point that Tony used to make on older episodes to comedians on Kill Tony was not to make shit up, and I totally agreed with him. And I used to make shit up in my bits until I heard him go on tirades against it, and he changed my opinion on it. When I started creating stand-up comedy, I loved that not everything had to be real like it does with rap. At least to me, rap has to be real. And I used to make shit up like all the time and mix it into real stories in my stand-up comedy when I started writing bits. And during this time frame, it was early 2019, 2013. It was when I discovered Kill Tony, and I was binge watching the episodes. It was like the vintage episodes at the Comedy Store, and back then Tony was like much nicer to the bucket pools. It was like half about like prying into their life and half about giving them comedy advice. Now it's more about half about prying into their life and half about just like clowning on them and shit. And it's a little too much for Ric Flair, apparently. But I agree with everything he would say in terms of comedy advice. And back then, he went on a rampage virtually every episode, calling out stuff that was clearly far-fetched, telling comedians to stop making shit up. And through that, I saw the light. If your shit's clearly made up, I take it with a grain of salt. And it doesn't hit as much as something that seems like it's probably a true story. And when you're making shit up and you're mixing it in with real stories, it takes away from what's actually real. And I did a total 180 and scrapped anything made up, and all my bits that I have are all 100% real now, and I think that's what makes it funny. After the few sets I actually did on a couple different occasions, people came up to me and even asked me if something actually happened, and it's easy to answer because I'm like, yeah, everything I say on stage is a true story. But now Tony's done like a total 180, and he never gives a fuck if someone's shit's made up anymore. He constantly is like, wow, what a set, on some shit that's clearly far-fetched, hence the kid Rick Diaz's jokes. If I accomplish my goals, I want to have a comedic philosophy conversation with Tony Hinchcliffe so badly. I want to talk to him about comedy, and I want to talk to Rogan about life and how terrible people are. And then moving on, but along the same lines, I'm going to tie Jim Carrey into a couple points I've already made, because I just saw a clip on him talking about the difference between sadness and depression. And he said, depression is your body saying, fuck you, I don't want to be this character anymore. And I thought I spread misinformation. And his next line was, depression is your body saying, I don't want to be this avatar in a world that's too much for me. And I just want to say that because I don't want to take him out of context, even though all I saw was this small clip and I don't know what it's from. So I don't know the context of the clip. All I know is what I saw. So that second part of what he said definitely captures how people who believe they're depressed feel. But even that part of what he said, I disagree with. I don't think your avatar is something you have to quote unquote be, because like the part of what he said that I really disagree with was depression is your body saying fuck you, I don't want to be this character anymore. And then after that he said depression is your body saying I don't want to be this avatar in a world that's too much for me. Because like the difference to me is like when he says I don't want to be this avatar, then it's like, oh, you feel trapped in your body. But then when he says I don't want to be this character, it's like you don't gotta be a character, you know what I mean? Like you don't gotta play a character. If you're just yourself, then you're not being a character. And that's why I fundamentally disagree with the beginning of what he said, but I don't fundamentally disagree with the second part of what he said. But even the second part of what he said, I don't agree with, because I don't think your avatar is something that you have to be, like a costume that you put on and wear. I think it's just a reflection of who you are. I look at it as like maybe the soul is like infinite and becomes visible in various different lifespans throughout time, and depending on that current life's chemistry is how it looks, but it's all the same reflection. When I look in the mirror, I'm not like, that's just a shell, but it's not really who I am. If I was blind my whole life, when I finally got to see myself for the first time, I would probably think, geez, that's like exactly what I pictured I looked like. My avatar is kind of like a precise reflection of who I am. It's not a coincidence what it looks like, in my opinion. If anything, I'd say I feel trapped by my physical limitations, but not trapped in the avatar that I feel like isn't me. And in regards to him saying in a world that's too much for me, I feel like a precursor to believing that somebody's in a depression is feeling like the world is too much for them. So I agree with that part of what he said for sure, but I just think that's a natural feeling of being human though. And if someone's sinking into the pit of depression, that feeling is a checkpoint along the way. Like, I acknowledge that Jim Carrey is like an extremely funny person, a stand-up icon, this, that, and third. I'm not questioning any of it. I agree with it all to an extent, but his brand of humor just doesn't do it for me. I like a lot of Jim Carrey's movies, but he doesn't make me laugh. Everything he does is just so over the top with it. It's not what I find funny, and it's ironic that he says depression is your body saying I don't want to be this character anymore, because that's the part I really disagree with. Nobody's forcing anybody to be a character. All you gotta be is yourself. And when Jim Carrey says depression is your body saying, I don't want to be this character anymore. That sounds like somebody who's exhausted from putting on a character. And it's exponentially ironic because he literally was the mask in a movie. There's no right or wrong way to do art, but some people try to get away from who they are through the arts, and someone like me is trying to project who they are through it. And in my opinion, if you use these platforms as an outlet for self-expression, then that's going to be good for your mental health. But if you're doing an act on stage that you got to turn on and you're not truly being your authentic self, then the craft could possibly work as a detriment to your mental health. As of late, I keep talking about YouTube commenters, but they're so fucking pathetic, and I like to use their patheticness to highlight points. And they're usually the reflection of a popular opinion that people actually believe. But undoubtedly, the most recurring comment on my videos is, please don't kill Tony. And I don't know if they're trolling me or if they're serious, or maybe it's a combination of the two. But if it's a joke, like ha ha ha, you're so funny, but if it's serious, it just shows how fucking lost these people are. I'm so sure you could see my appearances on Kill Tony and then go to my YouTube channel and think I'm a liability and a loose cannon. It's artists that try to escape through the art that I feel like you gotta watch for, not somebody like me who's mad authentic and telling you exactly who he is through the art. If you watch my music videos or podcasts and you think I might kill Tony Hinchcliffe, then you have terrible judgment of character. I might kill myself if he says he's not bringing Rogan to my YouTube channel, but I'm definitely not killing him. And I'm not trying to knock anybody who does use art as an escape. People have the right to attack these art forms however they choose. How someone does it is up to them. But if you gotta watch out for any artist doing something crazy, it's more likely to be someone who you still don't know who they are after watching them express themselves artistically through words. And don't be shocked if there's a high correlation between artists who hide their soul artistically and artists that suffer from mental illness and depression. And if they don't hide their soul artistically and they do suffer from mental illness and depression, then it reflects through their art. And then one last thing, comedy related, specifically Kill Tony related, and it ties into depression because this really highlights what is, in my opinion, possibly the deepest roots of where quote-unquote depression and mental illness stems from, which is not feeling attractive and not being able to get what you want out of your sex life. But when people talk about mental illness, they never attribute sexual frustration as a major contributing factor, and we suppress how painful it is to truly not feel like you're attractive. No offense to girls with fake tits, but to go through with that operation, you have to be deeply unhappy with your body, and the solution to that unhappiness isn't fake tits, specifically because they look fake and they feel fake. If fake tits were indistinguishable from real tits, then my perspective on them would totally flip. But getting fake tits is just another side effect of a larger issue at play, just like depression is. And you can't convince me that if a girl has fake tits and also suffers from depression, that the two are unrelated. You're not convincing me that she just happens to want larger breasts and her insecurities about her body are unrelated to her mental well-being, and depression's a totally separate issue caused by being born with the chemical imbalance. And obviously it's not as common for guys to be openly insecure about their bodies, but do you think dick size is unrelated to the mental health of men? For me personally, the true internal confidence I would have in the relationships that would stem from it if I had a big dick would literally improve the quality of my life exponentially. But no one would ever attribute a small dick to negatively affecting somebody's mental health because it's blasphemy to say such a thing. Think of it like this. It's like living a life where so much of your life was based off of people wanting to play basketball with you, but you're 4 feet tall and you're slow and you're unathletic. If I had a big dick, I'd be excited for girls to see it, but I have a small one, so I was always nervous for hookups, feeling like I was an inevitable disappointment. That one difference right there totally alters your wiring. I've heard Rogan say, like, if he was growing up today, he would just send dick pics to every single girl he knew. You have to believe you have a big dick to want to do that. Like, I'm embarrassed to send dick pics to girls. If I had a big dick, I would let every girl that I thought was hot know about it, and I'd tell them they're welcome to see it whenever they want it. Believing that you have a big dick is the difference between being able to whisper into a girl's ear, I'll fuck the shit out of you, and thinking it's not even worth approaching her. People don't get how that's the difference between being excited for a hookup or dreading hookups. Having a small dick makes you uptight around girls. Best case scenario is I get to hook up with her, but the worst case scenario is she sees my dick, so it's a catch-22. And when you're insecure about your body, you have to try to suppress it. It creates a deep-rooted unhappiness and reflects on the surface very often through anger, which we see as side effects in society that I talk about. And when you're not getting what you want out of your sex life, it's going to affect your relationships. I've seen like videos of hot girls talking about like how they want to be like single and independent for a while. It's a conscious choice that they make and they talk about it, but they probably don't even go through with it. But the point is there are girls and guys who can't even envision life outside of a relationship, whereas I've never shared intimacy with anybody ever. All I know is life by myself. So the point is that happens because I have a lack of a sex life. The more sexually attracted somebody is, the more likely they are to have an active sex life, and then that just spawns relationships, and then people in your life just stem from that, whereas virgins who have never been in a relationship tend to live desolate existences. So that's the preliminary talk highlighting how much our sex life influences our overall happiness and well-being. And I mention it because Hans Kim recently said on Kill Tony, he said, Cam's living out my dream. And to the naked eye, they're living identical lives, but Cam is what it looks like when you get the opportunity and everything is going smooth sexually. And Hans is what it looks like when something's not quite right. And it's funny because I had the same thought on my own, and then like a week later, Hans literally said the same exact thing that I was thinking when he said that. A few weeks ago, I was thinking about like, yo, I'm watching Cam live out my dreams, and I'm literally watching Hans live out my nightmare. And I figured in a non-resentful way, Hans is kind of envious of Cam's existence, and then when he made a joke making light of it, he kind of verified it, and he likes Cam, so he's obviously happy for him, and in no way am I trying to imply that he has any ill intent for him in any way whatsoever. Like, Hans was tongue-in-cheek when he made the comment, and he feels so comfortable saying it publicly because of the fact that he likes Cam, and it's meant with love and no malice whatsoever. And I constantly talk about Hans Kim's sex life on this podcast because it's on display publicly on a much bigger platform than this is. And if you watch Kill Tony and you can't see that there is, or at least was, something wrong with Hans Kim's sex life, then I don't know what to tell you. The storyline every episode used to be what's new in the love life of Hans Kim, but the reason Tony always went back to the well was because it was always embarrassing and funny, and it always made for an entertaining story. It was never as simple as a groupie wanted his dick, so he fucked the shit out of her. So I only talk about Hans Kim's sex life because I feel like it's already being done publicly on Kill Tony, but I'm only obsessed with it because I'm obsessed with my own sexual futility, and I feel like me and Hans Kim live a similar truth sexually in many ways, and we both lean on art to get around it. And I feel like watching him up there weekly is like watching myself if I walk down a different path, but he's like much younger than me, so he has a lot more time to get out of it than I do. But Hans looks like I would look if I was in his exact position and was still in my head about performing with girls. Going into becoming a regular on Kill Tony, at that point Hans was much further along with girls than I am currently, but it's clear at that point, even though he had gotten his feet wet, he had never had an active sex life, presumably. And I feel like he looks how I would look if I was in his position and were a regular on Kill Tony, and I hoped I would just use that to break through sexually and my struggles with girls would just disappear. It would have presented opportunities if I was in Hans Kim's position and was a regular on Kill Tony, but if I tried to brush everything under the rug and acted like I had been there and done that, then I would have been even more in my head with girls than I already am. It would have added even more pressure if I tried to use that opportunity to get right sexually. I would lean on alcohol as a crutch heavily, and I would have been even more disconnected in terms of being present in hookups than I ever was. But by totally airing my shit out, I believe it'll dissipate pressure, and even if it doesn't fully, here's an example of how at least will to a degree. Within the past 10 years, anytime I've had any chance with a girl, I felt immense pressure to make her aware of my situation, but that gay ass talk ruins everything. If a life spawns from this, like the Kill Tony incident, and anyone that I might hook up with going forward, girl or guy, is aware of exactly who I am, then going forward, I won't have to explain myself to nobody. And at minimum, the pressure of feeling like I have to explain myself is gone. And that's if a life stems from this. But if nothing stems from it, then I'm right back to where I started, and at least I aired my shit out and got it off my chest. But so the reason I say Cam is living my dream and Hans living my nightmare is because they both got the opportunity that I want. But Hans looks like how I would look if I was up there and still struggling with girls and it was on display publicly. And Cam looks how I would look if I started begging chicks and everything was going good. Hans looks like a broken soul on a weekly basis, and Cam came out of nowhere and is up there looking like he's living his best life. And on the surface, Hans is doing better than ever. He has a good-looking girlfriend, but there's nothing in this world I'm less envy of than Hans Kim's relationship. And I love Hans Kim. I'm not trying to speak badly about him. It's just like I'm on the sidelines reporting. That's kind of like how I feel like it is. If I was an active regular on Kill Tony and opening up for Rogan, it would basically have to be my future wife for me to get into a monogamous relationship. Plus, I would get stale as a boyfriend. My role is so much more authentic and fun for a girl if I'm like the side dude. And if I was out there living some public life, that's the role I would naturally fall into. Hans's girl would be so much more attracted to him if he was single and she was just a side chick, and in her universe, he was just a side dude. So instead of keep trying to have girlfriends like he does, I think being a side dude is a role that fits Hans better. It's a role that his life kind of sets up for right now. And it's a role that would make any girl that he's with more attracted to him. But over the past 2 years, like I said, it seems like half the girls that he hooks up with ended up being his girlfriend for a month. You know what I mean? Like if you want to be Hans Kim's girlfriend for a month, not right now, you can't do it. But before this girl did it, all you got to do is be decently attracted, DM him, come to the Vulcan one night and tell him you want to be his girlfriend within a week, or his girlfriend. He's open up for Rogan. He shouldn't have girlfriends right now. You know what I mean? Like he shouldn't be tied down to anything monogamous unless it's his future wife. He's not about to marry that girl. And if he does, good for him. Hopefully they are in love like that. But the dynamics of his relationship with her, how it's laid out to us, is exactly what I don't want in a relationship. And it's 100% what I would have had if I was trapped in the life that I am right now and I found this one girl who's way out of my league and she starts fucking with me. And disclaimer is that this current girl is not out of his league because of his status, but she still has the power, and it's kind of common knowledge that she is out of his league. But he's open up for Rogan. Like nobody's out of his league because of that. If a girl thinks she's out of his league, then he should be like, all right, you're out of my league, but you're not even in my universe, so it don't matter. But because she's the much more attractive one with the power and he's trying to cling on, he's obsessed with whether or not she's cheating on him. He says it as a joke like every episode, but like obviously there's truth behind it. But that right there is everything that like I don't want in a relationship. I totally get how you don't want your girlfriend hooking up with other dudes. And when I used to just have like gay ass emotions for certain girls, I'd get jealous if I saw them like talking to another single guy. So I can't blame guys for getting like that if it's like with their actual girlfriend. But I don't want my happiness in life to revolve around making sure some girl isn't fucking anybody else. If I'm hooking up with the hot girl who has options, I only want to be monogamous with her if I'm the only dude she wants to hook up with. If she still wants to hook up with other dudes, even if I want to be monogamous with her, I wouldn't want it because I don't want to be sitting around jealous all the time questioning where she is and who she's with. And I don't want to be the one preventing her happiness if she's in her prime and she still wants to hook up with other dudes like that. Like, I don't want to sit around miserable thinking about her fucking other dudes, and I don't want to be the one stopping her from fucking other dudes. So not only is Hans not fully capitalized on getting the opportunity that I want, but in my current life, I wouldn't even want to be in a relationship with the dynamics of his, no matter how hot the girl might be, and no matter how big of a virgin loser I was, because then I'm just preying on her happiness unless I actually am all she wants, and then I wouldn't need to be jealous. But people like me and Hans Kim aren't usually all the girl wants sexually. And if I were to get a similar opportunity, I don't know how it would work out, but the difference between me and Hans is how I'm airing out my sexual futility, and I feel like I could use that to my advantage, opposed to how lack of experience sexually is usually a detriment and creates pressure. So people just have an inferior sexual nature and it restricts them. I talk about the roots of where mental illness stems from, and in my opinion, this is it. Even if we all have the chance to fuck whoever we want, we still might not be able to perform and capitalize on the opportunity how we'd like to. It's a concept that a lot of people just ignore and don't fully comprehend. Just like some people are always ready to perform athletically, the same thing is true sexually, and I think the population probably overlaps. People's bodies are obviously physically different, but it just seems like some people's bodies are always on and activated while other people kind of got to jumpstart their system and get turned on. And these are the people who need to dig deeper for arousal, in my opinion. It's the reason that I contemplate if I'm gay, and it's the reason Hans Kim has said on stage publicly that he has erectile dysfunction because he can't get hard when he needs to. And it's the same reason I hear a commercial on the radio saying, ladies, do you avoid intimacy because of pain or dryness? There's no chance that those ladies are straighter than me if they can't even get wet for their husband that they love so much. I bet if you saw all the men in me and Hans Kim's bloodline, you wouldn't exactly see a projection of sexuality. I'd love to see the amount of ass that Cam's ancestors got compared to mine and Hans's. He's probably just naturally more sexually inclined than me and Hans, which goes hand in hand with having a bigger dick and being more attractive. He probably also performs better and is more athletically inclined. And this is all speculation, but it's fueled by how comfortable Cam looks on stage talking about sex life compared to Hans. And here's an example of how everything is connected. It ties it to so many points. Hans talked about having a girl come up to him at a meet and greet saying, "I'll kiss you if you kiss my boyfriend afterwards." And Cam said a dude came up to him at a meet and greet and said, "My wife gives good head if you want to take her for a test drive." It's just a microcosm of everything. And it's a smooth transition from that into the final thing that I want to talk about, which is how the Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce love affair has gotten beyond out of control. The publicity surrounding them has to be the gayest shit in the history of the universe. It makes me want to suck 1,000 dicks. If I hear one more time, Kelsey's going to play good this week, if Taylor's going to be at the game, it's like an extension of the people who used to sing Kissing in kindergarten. It's really like the same people still singing that shit as adults, but doing it in a different way. But it's the same gay ass shit. And if not being able to fuck Taylor Swift means you're gay, then I'm GAY. I have to think a girl is hot to want to fuck her. She's probably a very nice girl and has a great personality, but in terms of physical appearance, she has to be the most overrated girl alive. And I say that because they're trying to sell it to us like she's hot. The gay heterosexual universe wants you to think Taylor Swift is hot because it goes along with what they try to preach, that everybody's beautiful. And I think everybody is beautiful. I just don't think everybody's fuckable. And I'm not saying I'm any better. I don't think I'm fuckable. If all these women are so beautiful and their husbands are so straight, then how come so many men need a pill to fuck their nasty ass wives? Sterm Worm. Trip of a lifetime. Let's fucking go.